Who doesn't love a sequel, my friends? I know I'm a sucker for all those Marvel movies, as you've heard me quote before. And you know what? Maybe with me, sometimes you gotta expect disappointment so as you're not disappointed, to go back to that old cliche. But hey, I'm here to bring you a pretty good little sequel to the earlier video tonight, discussing Ken Holland's trade deadline strategy, right? Obviously, what I basically laid out in that video is saying it is about patience. It's about making the right move at the right time when it needs to be made. Well, for the Oilers, there's a couple of things they have to take care of right here, right now, in the next week, and obviously in terms of how they handle the trade deadline money wise. So I have those updates for you here in this video, friends. This is Dolany TV. My great pleasure to have you along this afternoon, this evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Heck, you could be my friends in New Zealand. I have multiple friends now in New Zealand. You've got a couple of people that watch the streams from New Zealand, as well as my new friend, my friend moving newly to New Zealand, so a couple of people living in tomorrow potentially watching this video. Fun fact, if you didn't know, New Zealand lives in tomorrow. Anyway, before we get to that, sorry to ramble on. I just needed a second to catch my breath after reading as much as I have. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. Really would love to have you aboard with the 10,462 crazy of us Oilers fans here on the channel, building this dang community all together and making something of a go here on YouTube, talking about the Oilers. All right, friends. Ken Holland, cap situation this week. Yes, Puljujärvi. That's where it all really boils down to, is what happens with that man right there. Should the Oilers trade Jesse Puljujärvi, I think a lot of the situation becomes much, much clearer for the Oilers. However, Ken Holland quoted as saying today in an Athletic article that he'll be placing two players likely on waivers on Sunday, Saturday, somewhere in there, to clear room for Kailer Yamamoto to be activated off of LTIR, but also mentioning that he will be actively seeking the rest of this week to make some deals in case there's interest in those players. Now, obviously, too, would there be interest in taking those players for free off of waivers? Sure. But again, you got to look at this from this perspective. There's about 10 to 15 teams in the NHL any given day of the week that have their entire salary cap maxed out at current. So the only way the other 15 teams in the league can pick up players, well, yeah, sure, I guess they got some salary room, but technically speaking, probably only about 10 teams in the entire NHL have the entire salary cap to pick up a player of Jesse Puljujärvi's grade, whether it be a guy who's worth $1.5 million to $3 million. There's only maybe 10 teams that can do it. I don't know what the updated figures are, but that would be my rough estimate. And in terms of anyone else that wants in on a player like Puljujärvi, in on a player like, I don't know, Warren Foegele, Devon Shore, Derek Ryan, any of those guys, the problem is they're going to have to find a way to get creative, and the only way to get that guy when he's available is to make a trade for him, and that's kind of where Ken Holland finds himself this week. But here's the problem, right? For the Oilers is he's got to make that move this week. I keep preaching it that it's going to happen this week. Well, always expect disappointment and never be disappointed, because the lamest move possible is the one that usually happens. And as somebody mentioned in my comments section last night, is simply, couldn't you just leave Kailer Yamamoto on LTIR, say he's not good to go, let him rest till the end of the season, and away you go? You very well could. And that's very well what could very well happen. Yeah, that kind of sucks, but that is a potential reality here for us Oilers fans. However, Ken Holland quoted, like I said, in that Athletic article today by Daniel Nugent-Bowman, as saying, if Kailer Yamamoto is going to play Sunday, I'll have to make some moves. We're going to have to move two players, two forwards, probably on waivers. I'll reach out and see if there's some interest. So he's going to work the phones. Obviously, he's picked the two players that are going on waivers no matter what. Again, for us Oilers fans, I think that most likely means Foegele and Puljujärvi would head to waivers. And does that clear enough cap space? I guess 1.1 and 1.1, 2.2. Yeah, that allows Kailer Yamamoto to come back off of waivers. But does it allow the Oilers to do what they need to do long term down the stretch towards the trade deadline? That in itself is part 2 of this video and another question, because for the Oilers, what do you have to do? You have to just like those other 10, 12, 20 teams that need to figure out how to get creative to make dollars work, to make guys come in and out, is it's as Ken Holland put today in the Got Your Back podcast that I referred to in video 1 this evening, is it's dollar in, dollar out, right? The Oilers need to make a move, but they can't afford to do it unless they take dollars back and get dollars out, right? That's the only way you can continue to maximize the LTIR situation, maximize the whole ability to get this crazy old job done. And that's where it all comes together for the Oilers, is just the creativity of a general manager who's been long in the game at the NHL level. And that's kind of what you have to question yourself here as an Oilers fan. Is, I know a lot of people wouldn't say they have total faith in Ken Holland, but you go back to video number 1, right? It's a patience thing. It's the right deal at the right time. You look at the guys available in the dollar matrices we'd be looking at to cure this problem. Is if you want to carry a good enough team going into the playoffs, you know what? You probably need another caliber forward. You probably need another caliber defenseman. The goaltending situation, thank goodness it solved itself over the season, as many theorized it would, but you also could not ignore the fact that it was a major problem at the beginning and caused us to be in the situation we currently are in. But when it all wraps up and comes down to a pretty little bow here, as I've got about a minute and a half before I head out, is, you know what, it comes back to that patience is key thing from Ken Holland, but it also comes back to the fact that the Oilers aren't in a good situation cap-wise. But it's another thing that Ken Holland said today, is it continues to throw wrenches into the mix every deadline, every off-season, when the cap goes from 81.5, 82.5, 83.5, potentially 84.5, right? It just keeps going up and up only by a million. You think about what that allows you to add. That barely allows you to, well, graduate any players to retirement, or even graduate players off of their ELC onto a reasonable NHL deal. It then in turn makes your value added players that much important. Think about what would happen if Ryan McLeod had to refuse to sign. Think about a Devon Shore and what his value to the Oilers roster was early on. Think about, right, all these guys and their value early on because of making that LTIR situation work, right? A guy like Ryan Murray, who we just haven't heard anything of. Yeah, Ryan Murray still exists, but he's still on LTIR. You think about a guy like, I don't know, who else could you throw that way? James Hamblin, Brad Malone, right? These are guys that don't move a single inch of the needle in terms of your game up front or defensively, but they are important cogs in the wheel when you're dealing in this new cap world the Oilers and the NHL find themselves in. And now it's a matter of figuring out how you fit the bigger pieces at the trade deadline. That's where A, patience comes in, experience comes in, and B, as well, for Ken Holland, figuring out what he has to do this week with the 2 moves he will make, right? He will make is what the quote says. That's what you need to know. I'll have to make, I guess not will, have to make some moves. So whether it be 2 guys onto waivers, or whether it be 2 Oilers being traded, or 1 Oiler being traded like a Jesse Puljujarvi, stay tuned for what indeed does come of it. Friends, I'm Tyson, this is Stolony TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am up on out of here.